So start now. You said you went training. You went trained with my dad in Charleston.
Do what?
You trained with my dad in Charleston.
Yeah, yeah. We were that's where we got together. We went to Westover, Massachusetts, and then they sent us. We got together at Westover, Massachusetts.
I left the other one upstairs.
And then they sent us all to South Carolina, where we picked up a B-24 and started flying submarine observation out into the Atlantic. And we'd fly 100 miles out in the Atlantic, turn south and fly 50 miles, and turn back and fly the 100 miles back. We were playing hide and seek with the German submarine on the East Coast. Saw one time, but it sunk before we could get to it. And always did the radio up. The navigator got a fix on it, and the radio operator called either the Navy or the Coast Guard about that. And that's the only time I ever saw one. We lost a B-24 over there. John and Harold and myself and the radio operator, Vincent Palmer, the flight engineer. We went on a training mission with two other B-24s as wingmen. And we had a lieutenant colonel that was the lead pilot. And these other two were right here. We were up here, and the other two were right here. They had a lot of thunderstorms down there back there. This was in July. And
that's great.
And
You flew generator Jenny, didn't you?
we flew and saw this big old thunderhead ahead of it. And the lead pilot said, "We'll just fly through it." And we flew through that thing, got into it, and I mean the turbulence was just like that. Ice and snow came in all over the Bombay. I was up in the nose turret. It came in the nose turret. It scared me, so I got out and went to the tail, crawled through the Bombay rack, you know. And there was snow and ice all over the place. And I was going to bail out. I had my parachute, and I said, something happened, I was going to bail out the waist. That'd probably kill me anyway, you know. Well, when we came out of it, this plane disappeared, and they think that it gets stalled out or hit a downdraft, and we never did find. We did search for about a week trying to find them, and later on, some yellow oxygen bottles came floating up on the beach, and that's all they ever found of them.
And my dad was in the plane, the same plane.
Yeah, he wasn't the lead pilot, but he was the pilot.
So, and he has a copy.
Yeah, John and Harold was the co-pilot. Excuse me, I get confused. But Harold was the co-pilot, and John Welch was the pilot. And then they had the lead pilot in there. He was Lieutenant Colonel. And John didn't want to do it, but the lead pilot said, "Yeah, we'll fly through it, so the B-24 can handle it." And they flew through it. And, all ice and turbulence was just like this all over the place, you know. But anyway, we were lucky to get out of that place. And the other plane, we never did find anything except those yellow oxygen bottles.
It was amazing how much ice and snow had come through those.
Yeah, the cracks, you know, all through there. The Bombay was just covered about a foot deep of sleet and snow, you know.
I made a snowball out of what come up this is the nose started.
Yeah.
Let's see. When did you first meet the crew that we put together?
Well, after gunnery school, they sent us to Westover, Massachusetts. And there's where we got the crew together, John and Harold and all the gunners. And then we were all shipped down to Charleston, South Carolina Air Force Base. And that's where we started doing training, overseas training. And that's where we went out into the Atlantic, you know, playing hide and seek with the German submarine.
Tell me about that story again about the submarines, because
well, what it was, we'd fly out 100 miles into the Atlantic and then turn south and fly 50 miles and then turn back and fly back 100 miles. We weren't the only one doing it. There's other B-24s along the whole west side doing it too. But we did that, was what I remember. And one time when we were doing it, we sighted a submarine diving way off in the distance. I don't know how far it was. And the navigator got a fix on it, and he gave it to the radio operator. The radio operator either called Coast Guard or the Navy, one of the two, I don't know which. But it dove before we could shoot. I wanted to shoot at it because I was flying waste and I had a company 50 caliber machine gun. I wanted to shoot at it, but it dove before I could get a chance at it. I was just 18 years old, just a dumb kid, you know. I was just eager for anything. And then we finished our training. Well, that was when we also flew out in that formation and hit that thunderstorm and filled all the plane up with ice and sleet and a lot of turbulence. And then the right wingman didn't come through it. They don't know what happened to him. He was never seen a game. All we ever recorded, we've searched for him, but the only thing they ever found was some yellow oxygen bottles that floated up on the beach. So he either stalled or downdraft or something. The B-24, once you stalled, you could never recover. They just kept going into the brink and everything.
But did you live near my dad, or did you folks live in the same area? Or what was living conditions like when you were down in South Carolina? In South Carolina.
Well, they had infantry, they had enlisted barracks, and then they had officers' quarters.
Okay.
Yeah. But we'd get together when we'd go to flights, you know, briefing and everything,
Yeah.
and go out like that. But everybody was cordial. John and Harold and all of us were all cordial, you know. And
Did you call one another by first names and like?
no, I called John Lieutenant Welch because he was the chief pilot, you know. And I think I called Harold.
Did they call him Ken?
Huh?
Did they call him Ken?
Yeah, but that's right. That's what it was. It was Ken. I remember that. Yeah. I'd forgotten about Ken. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
He went by his middle name more.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, we were all cordial, you know, and no animosity of them. The only one was the tail gunner, Bellinger. He was from Maine, and he kind of was a hothead or something like that, and he kind of ruffled our feathers every now and then, but we got along with him all right.
Yeah.
But the rest of the crew was good, and Vincent Palmer was the flight engineer, and like I said, Young was a ball turret gunner, and Kaufman was the right waist gunner. I was a right waist gunner, and Kaufman was a left waist gunner. That's what it was.
Who was the best shot?
I don't know. We never shot. The only time I ever shot was when I saw some sea turtles out there, big old sea turtles, and I wanted to shoot the 50 caliber, so I was in the left waist then, and I shot at them, and John called up on the rail and said, "What the hell are you shooting at?" And I told him, yeah. And that was the only time I ever shot the 50 caliber in training like that. So.
Did you ever get to shoot it on a combat mission?
Oh yeah. We I wasn't flying with John then. I was flying with another John Gary from Houston, because like I said, when John Welch made lead pilot, they had to get rid of a gunner, and they had to get what was called a Mickey operator that jammed the German radar. And so I lost, we flipped and I lost, and they put me in the spare pool. And then I was assigned, I flew one mission. I don't even know who the pilot was or what the target was. I flew as a waist gunner, and I don't even know where we went. They just came and got me before we even had breakfast briefing. And then the second time was the same thing. It was about 5:30 and wanted to know if I wanted to fly. They asked that silly question, "Do you want to fly?" And I said, "Do I have to?" He said, "Yeah, you volunteered, so get up." They took me out, and I flew the top turret then.
Ooh.
And I don't even know what the mission was or who the pilot was then. To another.
What? Tell me about the flight over to England. As I understand, they stopped
John, we all, after we finished our training at Charleston, we went up to Langley Field, Virginia, so the navigator could get some more training. Well, the gunners didn't have nothing to do, and we slept as late as we wanted to in the barrack, got up, and I went to the PX and had breakfast at 10 o'clock or something like that. We got 3-day passes to go up to Washington. And the thing about Washington, I remember this was that you didn't have to salute officers up there because there were so many GIs that passing officers, the officer's arm got sore from saluting. So they issued an order, you didn't have to salute the officers. And then we tried to pick up some girls up there, some wax, I think, and one was a Navy wave. And we went to some dance hall or something like that, I think. That was all we did in Washington. And then we went back, and he was there for about 3 weeks or something like that. And we left Langley Field, Virginia. Oh, something else I forgot to tell you. Back at Charleston, one of the things we had to do was go on long cross-country flights. And also when we were doing submarine patrol, we'd patrol at night too. Well, one of the times on night patrol, we flew all the way up to Long Island along the shore, trying to find submarines by radar. And I don't know whether we did, but the thing that impressed me on the ground were these beacons for the ships out into the ocean. They was flashing these beacons all around. And everything was just pitch black, you know, along the coast, except New York. New York was just lit up like this thing here. They didn't turn off the lights. And what it did was make a silhouette of all the ships for the German submarines, you know. Anyway, we flew up there that night. And then we went on a cross-country trip. I forget what the reason for it was. I guess to get the pilot and the co-pilot training on a flight, and the navigators, and the other navigator. Well, we left Charleston and flew toward Montgomery, Alabama, and then we turned south and flew toward Mobile, and then we went out across the Gulf to somewhere below Tampa, and I was flying nose, and we went over the Everglades real low, and it was raining. And as we were flying with the rain, it was a circle, rainbow circle, just flying right with us the whole time. We were going, the prettiest rainbow you ever saw right in front of us.
My dad said that when you flew over, you stopped in Iceland on the way.
Yeah, well, that was later. But then after this was cross country. That was when we were still in training. And we flew over this island, and then we turned up and flew along the coast of Florida's coast over Miami, and the whole time we were going through fronts, weather fronts, you know. Lightning was getting dark on us, and the lightning was all around and popping around, and this Elmo fire was going across the wings and popping off and going across it and popping off. Scared the hell out of us, you know. So the pilot told the radio operator to drop the trailing antenna, which was 100-foot cable going down, and that stuff went down and popped off. And we could smell gasoline. That was what was bad about it. We could smell gasoline. Anyway, we went through Johnson, went through about 3 fronts, and we finally ended up back at Charleston about 3:30 in the morning. And that was one of our longest cross-country missions. And I told John, I said, when we got to Montgomery, I said, keep on going to Texas and I'll bail out. He wouldn't do it. But anyway, like I said, we left Charleston, went to Langley Field. And Langley Field, we went to Bangor, flew to Bangor, Maine, and that's where we picked up a brand new B-24. The bomb bays were fully loaded with K rations. Those were little box rations, you know. And they had canned cheese in them, you know, these tuna fish cans, and in them, and they had crackers and cigarettes, and they were about that thick and about that long and about that wide.
During training, what's your, I guess, what kind of a guy was Ken Jordon during the
he was great, yeah. He was flying up there, you know, with cockpit. And I don't know, like the rest of us, we just all were just taking off, you know.
Would he do a lot of the flying in the pilot
I don't know.
kind of watch?
I don't know.
You couldn't tell from where you were?
I was back in the waist seat most of the time.
Yeah.
And he was up there in the cockpit. But I'm sure he did on that cross country. They had to, because at the long hours that we flew, that was about 10-hour flights, you know.
Wow.
And I'm sure John turned it over to him. But that we picked up that B-24 full of K rations. Bombay was just, both Bombays were loaded with.
And that's what you took over to England? That was
Yeah,
the cargo?
we left Bangor and flew to Goose Bay, Labrador. And at Goose Bay, Labrador, we landed. And the first thing we did, everybody got out of the plane and rushed down to that river, whatever that river is. And the whole country was in moss. There wasn't any grass or anything like that. It was all mossy. This moss that what they call it, Sugar's moss or something like that. And we went down there and looked at this river. And we'd never been to Canada, you know, and so we went back. We were there for 2 days. I don't know why, the weather seemed pretty good. We had to refuel up. And I wore my cowboy boots then too. And they have a picture, somebody took a picture of me out on the wing with the fuel hose and my cowboy boots walking out there on the wing, you know. I don't know where it is.
Did you guys go into a town with the group? I wonder if
Oh,
my dad went.
No, there wasn't anything up there. It wasn't
District.
a town at all.
Okay.
It was just the air base. It was a Canadian air base is what it was.
Okay.
And we were down under the plane, Young and I was down under the plane, and John and Winters and Ken were up there getting some information about leaving Goose Bay and flying over Greenland to Iceland, I guess.
What happened to
Getting
John?
briefed.
Where's the pilot? Whatever happened
What
to
happened to
him?
John Welsh? Did you ever hear?
Oh, John Welch, when I lived in Palestine, he was living in Guadalajara. And he left Guadalajara and came by Palestine. He visited all of us. And he came by and visited with me and spent a whole day with me talking about old times and everything. And then he went to Louisiana and saw Herman Young at Mammoth, and I guess the rest of the Vincent. Oh, he and Vincent Palmer and Harold were real buddies. I mean, they went to everywhere. They get together sometimes. They said in Florida, and Vincent would come down, the flight engineer, and they'd have a party or something with Ken and John.
Huh.
And
So they got together after the war.
yeah, they did. I didn't, but they did. Yeah, but. Vincent told me about. Vincent was a nice guy, and Vincent was a banker in Pine River, Minnesota. And when the war broke out, he was 32 years old, and he volunteered for the Air Force and went to mechanic school and became a mechanic and a flight engineer, gunner. And I was 18, and Herman was 18. And we thought 32 years was the oldest damn man we ever saw in our life. You know, an old man, you know,
Yeah, I
32
think
years.
Ken was 19, I think, when he went in.
Yeah. Anyway, well, that's what we thought of Vincent. He was just an old man, you know, but he was a nice guy.
What, you had some flights that were difficult. Was it the last one where you had a forced landing? Or were you on the crew at that day that they landed in Belgium?
No, I wasn't on that crew then. No, I'd already left then, yeah. No, they told me about it, how they had to force land in Belgium. The only thing that, well, let me finish this and then I'll get back to that.
Okay.
And then they were down there getting briefed, and Young and I were under the wing of the B-24 at Goose Bay, and this mosquito was diving down like this and going back up and then come back, and on the third pass the mosquito exploded, and these two guys bailed out, and they were coming down right on top of the runway out there. One of them was upside down in his chute. They don't know how it happened, and they had to run out there and break his fall, or he'd have been hurt, you know. And anyway, they got it down. Anyway,
This is in Goose Bay.
Huh?
At Goose Bay.
Goose Bay, yeah, Labrador. And then we left Goose Bay at night about 10 o'clock because they had said there were German submarines out there in the Atlantic counting all the planes that left Goose Bay. And by flying at night, they couldn't tell where the a B-26 or B-17 or B-24, you know, because the engine sounded the same. They could tell it was a fighter, and then I went back and went to sleep in the waist. Had my health earphones on, and I was asleep, and all of a sudden I heard the winter navigator say, "John, you better get some altitude. These mountains at Greenland are higher than we are." And that woke me up. I got up and looked out, and sure enough, there were these peaks out there, and we were flying below them, you know. But John pulled up and went on above. And then we came out on the other side of Greenland, on the east side, and somebody said, "There's a submarine down there." And we had some rounds in our gun, 50 calibers in, because we didn't combat. That was a combat zone then, you know. And so John let down and flew down there, and as we got closer, hell, the damn long wheel is what it was.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and so that's what it was. Everybody thought it was a submarine up there. We was up about 25,000 feet, you know, on oxygen. And then when we came down to the whale, well, we continued on and landed at Iceland. And Iceland is a volcanic island. It had a lot of volcanic rock. And the barracks that they had for these transit people, they had dug down into the volcanic rock about this deep, you know, like that. And then they put this equipment out on top of it. And they were for transit people. But hell, there was water coming, seeping in there, and it was terrible. I mean, just really bad. So Young and I and the rest of it, we went out there and stayed in the plane. And we were socked in for 2 days. The fog came in, and we finally got clearance to leave, and we left Iceland and flew across the Atlantic, across North Ireland, and I was flying the nose that day. And as we came into North Ireland, they have these big old cliffs, and the sea would coming up and splashing to get that, making big waves when they hit this big cliff. And then we flew across North Ireland, and then the Isle of Wight down to Wales, and we landed in Wales. Let me go back a minute. Well, at Charleston, when we finished our training, they gave us 10-day passes to go home. Well, I had to catch a train from Charleston back here to Texas, and that took a long time. Anyway, I stayed an extra day, and when I went back to Charleston, I was AWOL for 1 day. So I was made corporal then, and they busted me from a corporal back to a private. And so that's what I was from Charleston all the way to Bangor and Goose Bay and Iceland. But when we landed in Wales, John got us all together, and he said, "This is a combat zone, and I'm commissioning you all as a staff sergeant, the gunners as a staff sergeant, the radio operator back to, because it's a wartime commission, you know, you could do that in wartime to get what they call a wartime commission." So he got us back our staff sergeant and a tech sergeant for Dietz, the radio operator. And then we left there and went to Stone, where they assigned us to the 466, and we went to the 466. The first mission we flew was what they call windows. That's this thing back here where windows is, you know, where I got windows on the other side.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Up here.
Uh-huh.
See windows?
Yeah, I see.
What it was a blackbird mission at night. And what it was, we would leave at about 10 o'clock at night, and this is a special B-24. This was our first mission. We didn't get credit for a combat mission from it, but it was the first time we flew into combat. And under the waist windows, there was a slot. And in the bomb bay were these boxes and boxes of chaff. Now, chaff were these little aluminum strips about the size of these icicles you put on Christmas trees, you know?
Yeah.
And there were just boxes and boxes of them in there. And as we flew up toward the Dutch coast and turned south, we'd take those boxes, open them up and take these little packages and break the package and slip in that slip. The prop wash from the engine would scatter them all around, you know, and they'd float down. We were below 10,000 feet. We didn't have our oxygen mask on. And what it was, this chaff would mess up the German radar. The radar would just go buzz, like that. It couldn't. And the 458th bomb group, our sister bomb group, I can't remember whether it had a red and a white diagonal or a red and vertical diagonal. But anyway, it was our sister 96 bomb line. They had a black B-24 that didn't have any guns on it. And what it was, they'd load up with supplies for the resistance or take agents to parachute behind the lines in Germany. And they flew over us. And that's what we were doing. We were messing up the radar for the Germans so they could fly over us and drop whatever it was. And that was the first time we got back to the bay, flew down the Belgium coast, the French coast, and I don't know how far down the French coast.
So you were essentially opening the window for those guys to fly.
Yeah. And they still have this now, still in the 8th Air Force. In Linebacker 2, I don't know if you remember Linebacker 2, they used chaff in to try to mess up the SAMs, coming up. Yeah. And it's still called Winters now. But anyway, that's what it was for, so they could fly over us,
Did you guys have meetings of yourself where the officers and the enlisted guys got together and talked about what was going on, what was going to happen?
Yeah, when we got back off of the mission, we had what we call a briefing session.
Did my dad run any of those, or did he talk at them?
Yeah, we all came back. We all had to go to a briefing. It was a table like this, and we had a G2 officer up there where Deanne was, and we all sat around the table. And they had 2 jiggers of Scotch whiskey there for everybody. And some sandwiches and stuff like that. And we had to tell them what we did, and John was there, and he told what he was flying, and anybody saw any flak or fighters or what was the results. And we didn't have a bombardier then. I don't remember having a bombardier.
Did you fly on the Black Cat? Or is that
No. I'm thankful I didn't fly on the Black Cat. It was the last one shot down.
Yeah.
But Perry Curl, he was flying in a B-24 that was back of him, and he saw it get hit and go down. He was in a crew that was flying right behind him.
When you guys when you guys were on the base and not flying and had a day off, did you go to what's the name of that?
We'd go in north.
That restaurant, that pub that we went to? Did you go to some of the pubs that were around the base?
Yeah, there was one over at that little village over at the end of the runway, Semp Abbott or something like that. I can't remember the exact name. And they had a pub there. And then they had another one east of the base called Ringland, and we used to go to it too.
Okay.
So it was a pub.
Did you go as a group, or were the enlistmen stayed pretty separate from the officers?
Yeah. We, Herman and I and Dodell and I kind of stayed closer together than any of them. And he was from New York. And Herman would go with us, and we'd go to these pubs and drink beer, And one of the things that I remember is that we were up in what was called the west section. Everybody was scattered out over there, nothing was compact. And they had the the combat mess, and the Red Cross Center was here and was there, and the west barracks was way up there, about 1.5 miles away. But it was right near the base entrance. Didn't have any MPs up there. And so what we would do, we would take K-rations and get the cheese out of them and go down to the farmers and trade those cans of cheese for fresh eggs. Because we didn't have fresh eggs, it was all powdered eggs over there then, And they loved that cheese, boy, they just rested. But anyway, that was the first mission, was the Winters mission. And we came back, and about 4 o'clock in the morning, and as we got back to the base, the other guys were getting up to go out on a mission, and so we went to bed. Well, our first mission, that we had, first combat mission, was over to Hamburg. And we took off, and I was flying the right waist, and I was real gung-ho, eager, boy. I wanted to shoot those fighters down, and everything. John was flying, and Ken was up there, co-pilot. And we started out and we flew along those Dutch islands, the Frisian Islands, you know, around there, flew alongside of them. And then as we came down, there was Heligoland. They talked about Heligoland. And Heligoland was a big red mountain rock like. And it had a German fighter base on it too. We didn't fly over it, but we saw it and we turned south, right? It was one of our IPs, we turned south. No fighters came up and we bombed Hamburg. And a lot of flak. And there was this, when I saw this P-38 chasing an ME-109 German fighter. And there was a lot of flak going around, I heard bursting around. And I was sticking my head out like this. Boy, this was exciting. And this P-38 went up like that and went in, and no, the 108 went up like that and dove into this flak. And I don't know why he did it, but he did. And just as soon as the P-38 chasing him got up there, burst the flak, caught him and just blew him all to pieces. And I guess that's why the Germans, you know, were getting rid of him, because he figured he'd lose him. When I saw that, I stuck my head back in. I said, hey, wait a minute. This ain't no John Wayne movie. This is the real stuff. So after that, I wasn't as gung-ho as I should have been, you know. And that was our first mission. We came through it real good. And we saw those two fighters. They didn't attack us, but they attacked another plane behind us, I think it was. And we made it back to the base all right. And then when the second mission, I can't remember where it was, or the third mission. But then after that, well, that's when they started the gasoline, the trucking mission. And that was along about September, October, somewhere along in there. And John let me and he, like I said, he wanted Young to go with him because he spoke French. And like I said before, Ken and John wanted to chase French women so they'd have a Young with them to speak French, you know. And they were young, you know. That's what everybody wanted to do. And we took Young, and Vince Palmer, and Navigator Winters was on this trip to St. Nazaire, where they loaded up the gasoline, and we landed at this former fighter base at St. Nazaire. And we got out, and John and Ken and Herman took off and left Vincent Palmer and Dotell and Winters and myself for I said we've got together. And we heard there was a hotel in St. Nazaire. So we walked on in, and this was a Wild West town. The front was only about 15 or 20 miles up ahead, and you could hear the big guns going off the whole time.
Wow.
And we got to the main street, and there was these tanks going up the main street, and half tracks, and the infantry were walking on each side of them, heading up toward the front. And they had these cannons on these artillery pieces going up there too. Well, the hotel was across the street. We were over here, and all these traffic was going up. We had to dodge the tanks to get over to the hotel. And we got over there and couldn't get a room because the guys that had flown in ahead of us had all the rooms. They'd rented all the rooms. Well, anyway, about that time when Herman showed up, and Herman talked to somebody, and they got us an apartment. He got us an apartment that had a double bed, a couch, and a single bed. And it was a real nice, clean place. And we went up there, and that's where we spent the night. And what it was, Dotell was a long 6-foot guy, and Winters was too. So they got the day bed and the couch. And Vincent Palmer and Young and I slept across that bed, the crossway, not long. We sat across it that night. And the next morning,
Where did Ken end up that night? Where did Ken end up that night?
Ken was with John.
Where'd they go, do you know?
I don't know. They were trying, like I said, they were trying to find women, you know. I don't know where they did. Now, John and them went off by themselves. I don't know.
Do you have any thoughts on, was your crew considered a really good crew, or how did they rate in among
Oh,
the
yeah,
crews?
they were top crew. We were top crew. Yeah, yeah.
Because of what was how did you get that
Because we
status?
made it back. Yeah, that was the main thing, making it back. Yeah. Nobody got injured. I got hit in the back of the neck from flak on another crew, but it was superficial and wasn't bad. But they had different ratings for battle damages on the plane, from the flak or fighter. And so many holes were knocking out of the engine, like John was talking there about his engines going out this morning, you know.
Yeah.
And that was battle damage and stuff like how much you flak holes and stuff you got in it, and how many guys got killed, you know, on the plane, or wounded. And that was the way they rated, called battle damage. But John and I, we had a lot of flak and had some holes in the plane, but we didn't have any serious injuries on it that I know of. Now, they might have had some later on after I left. But Ken and John, no, we were good, top crew.
Were you rated according to hitting the targets also?
Do what?
Yeah, did you get rated according to how well you hit the target, or how the bomb damage was?
Yeah. Well, the whole group was rated on that, you know.
Okay.
They had what they call 100-foot circle, and that was the main thing. That was a Class A target.
Okay.
And if you hit outside of it, it was a B or a C, something like that. So, but I don't know how they did it. We didn't have a bombardier. And I forget who was flying those then. I can't remember who was up. But anyway, we didn't have a bombardier, and we weren't the lead plane. Like I said, John made lead plane after that, and that's when he got a bombardier and a Mickey Man.
Yeah.
And but what we did, they'd fly alongside the main lead plane, and when they opened the bomb bays and dropped the bomb, well, they had a toggle switch up in the nose, and whoever was up in the nose called a toggleier, he'd hit that toggle switch and drop our bombs, you know.
Okay.
Because we dropped them off the lead plane, because we didn't have a bombardier. Didn't have one of those Norton bomb sights in the plane either.
You know, I got a picture I'm going to bring to you, and I should have brought it tonight, but it's a picture of my dad standing there, and he's with several of the sergeants from the crew, and one of the guys had a camera that had this picture taken.
Oh, is that right?
I'll have to bring a picture and see if you're in it.
I don't remember that.
And then there's another picture of them getting outside the plane, and they're standing, it looks like they just finished a mission, and they're standing outside the Black Cat, but that may have been after you were with the crew.
Yeah, I didn't find the Black Cat. They flew in the Black Cat, but see, the Black Cat was the last one shot down.
Right, they were already gone back
Yeah.
and done.
Yeah. Take it.
There you go. You hadn't, so you didn't get to see my dad after the war?
Yeah, after the war, he came visiting me.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
In Palestine?
Well, no, not Ken. John did.
John did.
Ken, no. No, I didn't see Ken after the war. No, I did not.
Yeah.
I kept in touch with him. We dropped Christmas cards together.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, that was the only one. And like I said, I mailed him one Christmas card, and I can't remember where it was, and it came back and said undelivered.
That was Venice, Florida, where
Yeah,
retired.
that's where I mailed it to, but some address, and I can't remember.
Maybe it's
I
after
might
he's
have
gone.
it still at home. I think I've got it still at home.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he died in 2001.
Died in 2001.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember. But I know we used to check. We were all would exchange Christmas cards. Everybody did. John did, and
Yeah.
Dotell, Herman did. Herman was the first one to go. And like I said, when the war was over, he went back to being the president of that bank up there in Minnesota. And one time he was going to a bankers meeting in Mexico, and he had to come through Dallas at Love Field. And this guy in front of him was a friend of mine, and he was talking about that he was from Palestine, And Herman said, "Are you from Palestine?" This guy said, "Yeah." And he said, "Do you know Harold Dietz?" And this guy said, "Yeah." And so he explained to him, he'd been a flight engineer with me on the plane. And this guy came back and told me about him meeting Herman up there in Dallas. And Herman went first. Herman, his wife, when we were in training at Charleston, South Carolina, his wife followed him all over the places where he was going. When he went to basic, went to Colorado to study engines, she was right with him up there the whole time. And then at Charleston, she got this little apartment and was with him down there. And every now and then, she'd invite us all over there, and we'd have kind of a brunch or something like that, coffee or something like that.
So you never met my mother?
No, I didn't
His
know.
wife?
No, I didn't know that.
When was that 10-day leave that you talked about? That would have been in
When we finished our overseas training, everybody got a 10-day leave.
that would have been October or September?
That was the last part of July.
July.
Yeah.
So July, August,
Yeah,
September, October,
July,
November, December.
yeah.
That's about 8 months before my brother was born.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. I didn't know Ken was married, I didn't know him.
What would happen if we took your hat and your glasses off so we could see your face?
You'll see my bald head.
I
How
like
about your
it.
glasses? There's the
Wow,
guy.
there.
I can't open my mouth, I don't have any teeth.
Now you look like the guy in the photos we see.
Yep, yep, yep.
Well, this has been trivial. I got a couple more pictures. I'll bring them up tomorrow
Okay.
and show them to you.
We better go, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I want to thank you.
Yeah, thank you too.
Yes, sir,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'll talk more about Ken and what we did. And
Yeah.
one of the main things that impressed me was when we were going getting the gas down at St. Nazaire.
Yeah, that sounded like quite the.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been Patton's Army.
Yeah, well, it's
Color guard, halt. Port, arm. Freeze and arm. Post, help.
Present arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
Which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The twilight's last gleam.
arms. Forward, march.
Harold Dietz of Palestine recently received the French Medal of Honor in a special ceremony aboard the battleship Texas.
Our Joan Hallmark brings us his story in tonight's Freedom Fighters.
They call it the liberation of France, is what they call it. And that's why we were awarded, because we helped liberate France.
The special ceremony aboard the battleship Texas just weeks ago honored Texas veterans who had played key roles in the liberation of France in World War II. Harold Dietz of Palestine was one of the 37 veterans to receive medals for missions which helped drive German forces out of France. Dietz was a tail gunner aboard a B-24 Liberator bomber and the 466th Bomb Group.
I was really gung-ho then, until they started shooting at me, and then I brought my head back in, too.
The 18-year-old gunner would have to duck bullets many times during his 26 combat missions over France, Holland, and Germany.
The worst mission was to a little town called Piney, and it just so happened that on this railroad track there was a siding, and on this siding were 4 flat cars with 2 German 88 anti-aircraft guns on it. That was 8 of them. And they started shooting at us and opened up on us.
The first plane in the formation got its wing shot off, and Dietz's wingman got a direct hit.
And I was flying tail, and a piece of shrapnel came through and hit me in the back of the neck.
Others in Dietz's 10-man crew were also hit, but none fatally. Their crippled plane made it back to an emergency base in England on what is called the Wing and a Prayer.
We got out of the plane and started counting just the holes in the fuselage. There was over 300 holes in the fuselage.
Other bombing missions took Dietz and his plane Pegasus, the Flying Red Horse, as far as Dresden in eastern Germany. But it was a flight on December 24th, 1944, that was his most historic flight.
This was the biggest raid in history. 2,034 heavy bombers and 936 fighters were put up, and we clobbered the Germans on that. And that's what helped turn the Battle of the Bulge and the war, too. I only weighed about 130 pounds back then.
Harold Dietz now proudly wears a newer version of his old flight jacket and a cap depicting his many medals, including the newest, the French Medal of Honor, for his service in World War II. In Palestine for Freedom Fighters, Joan Hallmark, KLTV 7 News.
If you or someone you know served our country in combat, we'd love to hear from you. Send your information to Freedom Fighters at 105 West Ferguson, Tyler, Texas, 75702.